Welcome, Puneet sir, once again for the second session,
Yes, sir. Thank you.
and welcome all the participants. Now we are going to start the third session of today, and let me request Puneet sir to start the lecture.
Yes, sir.
Um, this
I'm
lecture is
just
going to be
preparing.
very interactive, actually interactive and hands-on. So all the participants are required to be there actually. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. Sir, actually, I want to share a few files with the participants. I'm not sure I can do it right now within the chat box as well, somewhere. Okay, so sir, I'm sharing files with you. You can share with the participants right now. So it also includes the file for the code which we are going to execute in this lab. So let's just wait.
So right now you're sending the files.
Yes, sir. I'm sending it through mail.
Okay, so I'll share them to the Google Classroom.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I have mailed it to you.
Just till now I've not received, sir. Actually,
Okay, okay. It may take a little bit.
little time. Now I got. So I'm just going to share with Google Classroom with all the participants.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you could catch something from the previous presentation where we discussed about the LSTM. So, if you remember, uh, we discussed that LSTM is useful for where the data is sequential. That means when there is the dependency with respect to time to produce the output at a particular time, LSTM is a useful thing. So in this particular presentation, we are going to do some hands-on using LSTM, and the objective would be to, okay, let me share the code here. Okay, so the objective would be to predict the air pollution using the data available till the previous time. That means we want to forecast the pollution at the next hour. Okay. I have already I shared the content of the previous lecture and the code which I'm going to use in this particular lecture. You can execute at your end also. I will show you the execution at my point. Okay.
Now,
So I
sir, I
hope
have
my
shared.
screen is visible.
Yeah, so your screen is visible now. I've also shared all the content what you have sent me through mail on the Google Classroom of the participants.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
So guys, in that file, I have shared three things. One is the code that is named as LSTM, and one is the row.csv. So we have the data in the row.csv file. Okay, so let me increase the size of this one. Okay. I hope it is visible to everyone. First of all, I will, okay, how to set up your Python if you are going to start working in the Python, then the first cell would be helpful for you. There are multiple options how you can execute, how you can try the Python programming. One, one, one domain is there are some online services provided by means the Google named as Google Colab. You can execute, you can use that one. So if those who want to try the education at this time, you can open the Google Colab and you can start execution at that. Okay, so you can use the Google Colab, otherwise AWS provided by Amazon and other. There are various other resources which provides the platform to execute your Python programming. Only issue with these online resources means in terms of Google. If I talk about the Google Colab, that is a really good platform because it provides means it provides you the online platform as well as it provides you a very adequate amount of hardware also. That it provides the RAM as well as the GPUs if you want. Okay, so that is a good thing. However, uh, for the beginners and for the small for the moderate level of models, that would be sufficient. But if you would like to increase the size of your model, if you want to go with the complex models, if you will, and the size of your data is very large, then probably you have to purchase some domain from the Google Colab. Otherwise, you have to go with the standalone system. In the first cell, I have mentioned that suppose if you want to execute the Python programming and the standalone system, then first of all, you have to install the Python programming, okay, and one ID you have to use, and then you can execute your programs. So you can go through this particular link I have mentioned here. Okay, is there anyone having doubt? Okay, if you do not have, I request to mute yourself. Okay, thank you. So this is the link. Those who want to, who are interested to implement the Python environment at their machine, you can do that. These are few steps. Okay, I'm using the Anaconda. There are lots of environments. I'm using the Anaconda because it provides lots of. It is incorporated with lots of IDs. You can use it with the PyCharm. You can use it with the Spider or Jupyter and so on. Okay. So you can download the Anaconda. You have to install the Anaconda. You have to update it. The detailed steps have been mentioned at this particular link. I am not going through that. If you want to install right now, it will take a little bit time, around 15-20 minutes, because you have to install all the libraries also, right? So that will take time, you know. So I'm skipping this first cell, although this is describing all the steps you want to install the Anaconda at your system. Okay. So in the next cell, here, okay, I did not mention, I'm using the Jupyter, I'm using the Anaconda, so I'm executing the codes at my machine. I'm using the Jupyter IDE. Okay. Those who are not familiar, let me go through these menu bars. We have a file where we are having lots of options to deal with the files, like save, to download a file and so on. Edit, view, insert. To insert a cell. So when we are talking about this in 103, if you are able to see in 103, we will call this as a cell. So if you want to insert a cell above or below, let's say if I want to insert one cell above to this particular cell, I can click this one. So one new cell will be added here. And the advantage of incorporating cell is we can execute each cell independently. Okay, we can execute one cell at a time, and we can observe the outputs with respect to one cell. Okay. So this is about cell. Then we have kernel. Kernel means you can say that is a you can say runtime life cycle of a one particular programming runtime. Okay, so that is the kernel. If you will restart the kernel, whatever you have executed, what are the variables there in the workspace, they will be omitted. Okay, in the cell option, actually there were earlier. Acha. In the cell option, there are multiple options to execute the cells. To which cell you want to execute, run cell and selected above, run cells and insert below, run all above, run all below, and so on. You can also convert the type of a particular cell. That means you want to just some markdown in that particular cell, or you want to insert some code there. There is option if you want to, if suppose you have executed some cells and there are outputs, if you want to clear the outputs or you want to toggle, you can do it from here. Okay. Then there are some widgets we can skip right now. Okay. So in this experiment, we are going to use air quality dataset from UCI machine learning repository. And we can use this data and frame a forecast problem. The problem is that given the weather conditions and pollution from prior hours, we want to forecast the pollution at the next hour. Okay, the reference for this particular problem is mentioned here. You can go through this. I have already mentioned how to set a Python environment for machine learning with Anaconda in the previous cell in detail. So let's start how we can forecast air pollution at given time, considering the information from the previous time, till the previous time. Okay, and that is the objective of LSTM, right? We want, if we want to produce some output, we want to forecast. This forecasting is based on all the previous inputs, and you can understand as long as information we have, that will help us to predict the air pollution or the means output in a better manner with better accuracy. First cell is describing importing few important libraries. So first library is the math library. We are going to use one function named square root. Another library is NumPy. It is very important library in case of Python where to handle the arrays. So from this library, we are specifically going to use one function called concatenate. Matplotlib, as name is suggesting, it is a library, again very important, to plot the matrices. It might be 1D, 2D, and so on. So we are going to use two functions in this matplotlib library, pyplot and image. Another library is datetime. We'll discuss that how we will frame the different columns in a datetime format. So we are using these libraries here. In addition to these libraries, the important libraries are pandas, sklearn, and keras. So here, first one is the pandas. Pandas is a Python library used for working with datasets. It has functions for analyzing, cleaning, exploring, and manipulating data. The name Panda has a reference to both panel data and Python data analytics. So Panda is abbreviation for either panel data or the Python data analytics. Created by Wes McNee in 2008. From the pandas library, we are going to use three functions: read_csv to read the CSV file, data frame. Actually, the other libraries, Keras and sklearn, they require the input format in the data frame, right? So it is you can consider this is a function to convert your matrices into data frames, okay? Or not matrices, means matrices, the array format, NumPy format into data frame. Okay, I don't think so. We are going to use the concat on the data frame, but it has been included here. You can probably remove. So here means you can observe that all these libraries, sometimes they are provided by the same vendor, sometimes they are not provided by the same vendor. So you will find that there are lots of functionalities which are implemented in multiple libraries. There might be different font of syntaxes to call those functions, not libraries. Same function in different libraries might be there with different syntax. So here in case NumPy, concatenate function is named as concatenate, while in case of pandas, it is named as concat. Another library which is very useful, very handy for machine learning applications. So the sklearn library contains a lot of efficient tools for machine learning and statistical modeling, including classification, regression, clustering, and dimensional reduction. So we have discussed about brief about all these things. We did not touch up about the dimensional reduction, but if you have heard about the PCA and other various other LD and things, those are techniques to perform the dimensional reduction. So we can use this library to call all those things. Although here we are just calling few functions of this library, like min-max scaler, which is used. We will use it for normalization of the data. Label encoder, we are going to use this function to encode the inputs. What mean by that? Suppose the input array is having A, B, C, D, and you want to encode it like 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can call this label encoder, right? Suppose, okay, I did not have that example. Suppose your input is A, B, C, okay? And if you call the label encoder, it will give you 0, 0, 1, 2. So A has been encoded as 0, B is encoded as 1, and C is encoded as 2. So it will give us 0, 0, 1, 2. Okay, so this is the objective of label encoder. We will also discuss when we will call this label encoder in our code. Then mean square error, that is the function to calculate the mean square error. We will use this function at the end while checking the accuracy of the build model. Here we are using the models from the Keras library, which is based on the TensorFlow. Keras is a minimalist Python library for deep learning that can run on top of Theano or TensorFlow. It was developed to make implementing deep learning models as fast and easy as possible for research. So you can understand Keras is the library which will be very useful to implement all kind of deep learning models. From the Keras model, from the Keras and the sub-library models, we are implementing these functions: sequential, dense, LSTM, dropout. Okay. So you might be aware about these terminology: sequential, which is used to build a sequential network. In most of the cases, the neural networks are sequential. Even the deep neural networks are also termed as sequential networks. However, there are few networks which are not sequential. So that's why there is a specific sequential, and some networks are also parallel networks. Dense network, or you can say it is an means if I will say the layer is dense, I will say that means that is a fully connected layer. So in case of neural network, every layer is a dense layer. You know, we can add the dense layer to our deep learning models also, where other layers are not dense, but we can add the dense layers. Generally, we add the dense layer at the end with the smaller size. LSTM, which we actually want to implement, and the dropout is a technique for the regularization. Okay, I will discuss it. Means when we'll use this one. Okay. Dropout is used. Dropout is a concept to perform the regularization. How dropout is there? So let me show you one example which we have. Let's say from the. Okay. Suppose this is simple. This is the feed forward network, right? And how the dropout layer will work. Suppose if I put a dropout layer here. If I put a dropout layer in between the first and second hidden layer, then what will happen? And let's say if I set dropout equals to 0.5, that means I want to drop 50% of the neurons to predict the current output. Okay, that means suppose if I have these 5 neurons, I have said dropout equals to 0.4. That means I do not want to keep information from 2 neurons to carry out to the next layer, right? I am dropping some information in between. Okay, so there might be a question then simply can't we reduce the number of neurons in the previous layer instead of calling dropout? But the point is, in case of dropout, the neurons which are going to be dropped are not fixed. They are stochastic in nature. That means randomly 2 neurons, because dropout is 0.4, 2 neurons will be randomly being dropped out. That means in a particular pass, at the time of training, 2 neurons will not be updated. Rest of the neurons will be updated with respect to particular cell. So that is the role of dropout, and it help us to help the model to be regularized. To understand the regularization, you can connect the word in the layman language generalization, right? So to generalize the model, there are lots of regularization techniques. Dropout is one of them. Okay, next let us talk about the dataset, how our dataset look like. So there are 13 entries in the dataset. The dataset that reports on the weather and level of pollution each hour for 5 years. So dataset contains all these features for every hour for 5 years. It's in the Beijing. 13 entries are number of row, means the sequence number, year, month and day, then hour, PM 2.5 concentration, dew point, temperature, pressure, wind direction, wind speed, cumulated hours of snow and cumulated hours of rain. So you can understand that from 6 to 13 are features, and 1 to 5 you can say this is describing sample, right? Because the time for us, for this problem, the time is not the feature, right? The features would be all these features till this point to calculate the next point. So if you will call this dataset read underscore CSV, the file name is row.csv. So let me show you where is this row.csv. Here it is, row.csv. Okay, you have to kept this Python code and whatever the data files you are using in the same folder, and then you can navigate. So okay, let me show you when you will implement the Anaconda. You just have to type the Anaconda. It will open the Anaconda prompt. You can install. Okay, let me open it. So if you want to install any package, you just have to write down pip install and the package name. Okay, suppose if you want to install sklearn, in that case you will do pip install sklearn. Oh, sorry, there is a spelling mistake. So that is the task of Anaconda prompt. For the IDE, that means you can say this is your editor. As in case of C language also, you may write down your programs in the text files and then you execute the program with the compiler GCC. So same here, Python programming environment is the compiler, and this Jupyter is the IDE. We are using the Jupyter to write the code. So you just have to write down the Jupyter, and you will open this particular file. Wherever your file is, you will open that folder where the Python code should be there and the data file should be there in the same folder. Otherwise, you have to give the path. Okay. If you will observe here in this syntax, I have not given any path because this file is already in the same folder. So dataset equals to read. This will be to read the file from all the columns, right? If I will write down 0 instead of 0, if I will write down 1, so first it will read the data from 1. Okay, please observe in the Python, the indices generally start with 0, as in case of C language. This is different in terms of with respect to MATLAB, right? With MATLAB, generally the indices of the array start with 1. Okay, so once we read the dataset in the variable dataset, we are printing the dataset. So this is how our dataset look like. The first column is number. We are making the first column as index column. Okay, we are making the first column as index column. So this is not being treated as a feature here, right? Rest of the things are feature. However, we have discussed that year, month, and day will not be feature. We will see how we'll prepare our data so that we can use year, month, and day as number of sample, particular sample, and all the rest of the things as a feature. So you can observe there are lots of issues. First issue, we do not want this sequence. Instead of this sequence 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we want the sequence in terms of date and time, including date and time. So suppose this will be my first sample, this will be my second sample, this will be my third sample, and so on. So instead of numbering sequentially, I want this numbering. Okay. So we will discuss how we will format it. That's why we call this date time function from date time library. Another issue you can observe that in some features like here PM 2.5, there are few entries as NaN, right, which describes not a number. Generally, it happens if means if either it is zero, it is minus infinite or infinite. So we have to make them as zero if it is not clearly described. So this is one issue. There are some NaN here. We have to make them zero. Another issue that this NW that is describing the direction of the wind, so northwest, southeast, and so on. So what we'll do, we'll encode them. As I have mentioned, we are using a label encoder function. So suppose if there are 8 directions, it will be coded from 0 to 7. Okay. There are various other options like one hot vector coding also you can do that. But right now here we are just coding them from 0 to 7. So label encoder can also be used to convert your output as a one hot vector in multi-class classification techniques. Okay, let's see how we can deal with this particular data, how we can prepare the data so that we can build our model. So, okay, let me execute. To execute any particular cell, let's say, although I have already executed all these cells, let me execute. I just have to click the run to execute one cell each one time, one particular at a time. So to execute this one, okay, let me clear all these things and then it would be better to, yeah. Let me execute each cell now. So run, 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 run. Achha, have you observed that until that particular cell has not been executed, a particular number has not been given, right, to that cell. Once it has been executed, the number will be given. Same as in case of Google Lab, until that particular cell will not be executed, it will print as a star. Once it is executed, it will print as a particular number. So we execute this, okay. We imported the Keras libraries, done. We load the data and let's say we want to print the data. So here we obtain this output, right? Okay. Next is preparation of the data. So as I mentioned, there are some issues with the input data. First, we want to parse the date time information as pandas data frame index. Okay. So if you remember, if you have noticed, we want to frame these 4 entries as one variable and as in data frame. Okay. In a data frame format. So we have mentioned that we want to parse these 4 entries: year, month, day, and hour. Okay, we have called this date time dot string to p time, and we have given these 4 entries. You know, year, month, day, and hour. Second issue, we observed that there are some NaN values here. There are some NaN values in but one particular feature PM 2.5 initially for 24 hours. So what we are doing, we are discarding the initial 24 entries from our dataset. So what we have written, dataset equals to dataset from 24 to all rows. Okay. So we have discarded initial 24 rows. Initial 24 rows or samples. Okay. Okay. Next is we do not want number, serial number as a column. So we are going to drop that. To drop, just call dataset.drop. Which column? Number. And in place, what we want to make axis, first one. Initially number was the axis, right? Index column. Now we want to make this first as a first one as a axis. So we are making as axis 1. Moreover, we are changing the name of columns in the meaningful names. Earlier, you can observe there are some names like IR, IS, IWS, and so on. So we are giving some meaningful names here: pollution, dew, temperature, pressure, wind direction, wind speed, snow, and rain. And the index name, what we have passed here, we are giving that name as a date. Fine. In addition to these 3 issues, there was one more issue observed, that there are few NN entries in between also. So this is the function to call that one. We are forcefully making them 0. So function is called as dataset pollution fill NAN 0. Okay. So this feature PM 2.5 has been given named as pollution, and in this particular feature there are few more entries NAN. We are replacing all those entries with 0. Okay, so let us see what is the impact of all these pre-processing steps on the data. Let us execute this one. So you can see I have just printed 5 samples of the data. So from here to this one, you can observe that this is the data before the preparation, and this is the data after the preparation. So you can observe we have created one new index column that is named as date instead of number, and we have combined year, month, and day. Okay, although I have not printed. Okay, let me print 25 entries instead of 5. Acha, it is 0. So okay, now you can see there is one entry with for 1 hour on a particular day. So there are 24 hours, so 0 to 23, and then there would be next entry on the next day. Okay. So now we will say this is our one sample. This is the index of our first sample, instead of sequential numbers. You can observe we have removed the initial entries. Oh, okay. We have removed the initial entries, and this is the output from the previous one, and we have updated that one. Okay. Did you observe means there is something different here, because actually once we have executed one particular cell, if we are re-executing it, we already updated the data set, and that's why when we were printing the data set here, the data set updated in the previous execution is getting printed, and that's why this is already formatted. So don't get confused. So in the prepared data, we have framed everything. We deal with all the issues which was there in the initial raw data. You have to identify whatever raw data is available to you, what are the issues. So you have to first convert your data into a particular format which would be acceptable in the model. I'm not talking here, we are not converting any domain. We are just preparing the data, right? We are not doing any transformation here. Okay, to visualize the data, let me execute this particular cell. What we are doing here, we are just plotting the data 0 to 7 except 4, because 4th is the wind direction and we do not want to print that one. So if you want to print that, you can also do that. Otherwise, you can print like this. So one thing you can easily observe, that the dew, temperature, most of the features are periodic in nature with respect to year, right? Since the data is for 5 years, you can observe that the data is cyclic with respect to year, right? Okay, so of course, means this is the region. If the model allows you to carry some information from previous year to next year, that would be helpful. Okay. And that is the objective of LSTM, long short-term memory. Okay. Sure. So we have prepared the data, means we have prepared the raw data. We addresses the issues in the raw data. Now we want to prepare the data to perform the classification, right? Till now we just handle the issues in the raw data. To understand what mean by that, we want to convert time series data into a frame, into a format which is suitable for the classification. To understand that one, let me use this figure. In this figure, you can observe that this is your time series, let's say from T1 to T8. This is a time series data. Okay. With respect to every time, there might be multiple features, as in case of our data. Now, suppose I want to predict T4 based on T1, T2, T3. I want to predict T5 based on T2, T3, T4. I want to predict T6 based on T3, T4, T5. So you can observe at the below, in the below side of the figure, that my input would be T1, T2, T3, and the output should be T4. Now it becomes a classification problem, right? Or in this case, it is a regression problem. I want input from the previous time steps. How many number of time steps? That depends on your objective. Like in this example, in this figure, it is using 3 time steps to predict the output at the time step 4. In this example which we are going to use, we are going to use 1 time step. Let's say, means we want to predict time output at time step 2 using input from time step 1. Output at time step 3 from the input at time step 2, and so on. That means we are using 1 time step to obtain the output at next time step. That means we are using 1 to 1. It depends. I have in the previous lecture, when we were discussing various architecture of LSTM, we discussed that it might be 1 to 1, 1 to many, many to many. You know? So here in this figure, it is many to 1, right? We are applying many inputs and we are producing 1 output. In the example which we are going to build the model we are going to build is going to be 1 to 1. We are going only 1 input and we are going to get 1 output for every time step. Okay. Is it clear? I hope, because it is important. The next cell will be is used to convert our time series to a data which is suitable for the supervised learning. So we will try to convert the time series into supervised learning data. Is there any doubt till now?
If you want to take the timing of after 2 days, T4 plus 2, like 7th day, here I can do that.
What? Sorry, I could not get you.
Sir, here T1, T2, T3, then the T4 we are predicting. After taking the 3 days only, I want to predict the after T4 series. That is possible with some functions adding T1, T2, 3 like this way.
That's what this particular figure is describing. We are taking 3 time step inputs to produce output at one time step 4.
No, sir. Like weekend, I can predict, sir. Like after taking all these features, 7th day, 14th day, like this way, what will be?
No, sorry, I'm not getting. What are you asking about? That what will happen
Sir,
at time
here
step
the
7?
time series analysis is there. No, sir. 1 to 6 series. How many parameters are responsible to predict the next output? Like here, you consider only 3. No? Is it possible? I can take 3, 4 like this way.
Okay.
T1, T2, T3.
Are you talking about? Okay. So if I could understand you, I think you are a little bit confused. This is for one particular cell of the LSTM, right? If you okay, let me open that one. Here. Point is, whatever these number of time steps, this is for one particular cell. We are getting output at HT. So if I will say the first cell is describing a time step 1. Anna, actually means we are taking 3 time steps. So the first output will be produced at time step 4. So here the input will be T1, T2, T3, and the output would be at T4. The next cell will take input T2, T3, T4, output T5. But if you are confused that when you are getting output T7, of course it is taking input T4, T5, T6, but this is for one cell. We have already discussed the memory or the experience from all the previous time steps that will be carried out through the memory cell. Is it clear?
Yes, means continuously different cells are there to predict.
Yeah, yes, means one cell is responsible for one output here right now. I think I have one that many to one example here. Okay, we are taking this one, right? We are taking, these are all number of neurons here. We are taking means let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We are taking 7 inputs to produce one output. Now to produce a next output, again we will take 7 current inputs in addition to the previous output, the previous experience. So you can consider that this is one cell, right?
It is done for every cell.
Yes. For every cell, we are taking 3 inputs, 3 time steps inputs to produce one output. And then the generated output and the experience will be carried out for the next cell. And the next cell will do the same. Is it clear now? Hello?
Yes, sir, I got it.
Okay. Okay, so let us see how we can frame the data in this format. So we will frame the supervised learning problem as predicting the pollution at the current hour, given the pollution measurement and weather condition at the prior time step. So you can say, means if you want to forecast a particular data, you can say that we want to predict that or estimate the data at current time t through the previous information. So first step, integer encode of the wind direction. Actually, it should be the part of the preparation of data. As I already mentioned, what we are going to do, we are going to convert those direction, 8 direction into means integer numbers. So it will be encoded 0 to 7. Okay. We are ensure that every data is in the format of float 32. So we do not lose any information when we are going to perform some operation on those numbers. Min-max scalar, the objective is to normalize the data, and we want to normalize the data from 0 to 1. Okay. It is always a good idea to normalize your data, because otherwise it might happen that, let's say if in our data, if you will see, the value of pressure is very high while the value of temperature is very low. So if you will not normalize in your model, the pressure feature will impact in large amount, right? So it is better to normalize your data. Okay, yeah. So we are normalizing the data. This is we are framing the scalar, and then we are calling the scalar dot fit transform on the values. Acha, I think okay. We are calling these values dot set data set dot values. Earlier it was data set. Earlier it was data set. Acha, we have also called values here. Acha, let me print the values here. I want to show what mean by the values and data set. What is the difference between these two? So let's say this is the data set and this is the values. If I print these things, what will happen? You can observe when we are printing the data set, it is printing the index column as well as all the name of the columns and all the data, all the values, right? While if I will just print the values, which is values equals to data set dot values, this function is used to pick only values from the matrix. So it will just print the values, right? It is not picking the index column as well as the name of the columns. Okay, it is just printing these values. Okay, since we are going to deal with only values, the index column and the features, we are means the purpose of those two things is to interpret the data. Okay, so that's why it has been called values equals to dataset dot values. We are performing. We have discussed this one. So here we are calling this with transform on the values. Okay, so let me execute this cell now. I have just printed the 5 cells. After the encoding, you can observe that initially there were the name of the direction was like AC and NW and so on. It has been encoded like 2. So AC has been encoded as 2 here. And after the normalization, the values have been converted from 0 to 1. Okay, so any doubt till now? Means we have not converted our data into supervised learning problem till now. We have just normalized the data. The next cell is the purpose of this cell is what we have discussed. We want to convert the time series data into a supervised learning problem. So prepare the pollution dataset for LSTM. Time series forecasting problems must be reframed as supervised learning problems. A time series is a sequence of numbers, while a supervised learning problem is comprised of input pattern X, and there would be one output pattern with respect to every input. So, okay, let me execute this one. So this is the time series data, 0 to 9. I will explain this function. Let me execute this one first. What we want to convert this time series data into a supervised learning problem. What we want that for every input, we want output, you know. And in our example, what we want to predict the output. We want to predict the pollution at time t plus previous input, right? So what we just have done here, we are going to shift the same values which we want to predict. Let's say this is the column we want to predict. We are going to copy all these values here by shifting it one row above. Okay. So we have deleted, let's say you can consider that we have deleted first row and then we have shifted, and the last row has been termed as NN. So the function to do this is shift, and we are calling the data frame. Okay, we are calling the data frame of the pandas, although I have already mentioned this line in the one. You can remove this or redundancy. So we are calling the data frame, and we are doing the shifting by -1. If you will do +1, then it will be shifted in the downward direction, right? So first entry will become NN, and then all these will be copied. Okay. Fine. So similarly, we are going, this particular cell is doing that task. Let me execute this one. So what we are doing here, first let me show you again the data, original data here. Original data is like this one. Original data is this one. We are having first entry is the pollution. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 features, right? So exactly there would be 8 input features at one time step. Please remember, 8 features at one time step would be input. You know, in this example, I'm going to show how to predict output using one time step only. You can, as I'm, and we have discussed that you can use multiple time steps to predict output at one particular time step. That means many to one. But here in this example, I'm going through with 1 to 1. So in one time step, there would be 8 features. So what we are going to do, we are going to copy the first, this column, pollution column, after shifting. Okay. So let us observe this output of this cell now. What we have done, we have copied all the entries from column 1 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we have copied, if you will observe, the first column, variable 1, has been copied after shifting, after removing the first row. First entry in this where VAR1T is 0.14. That is the second entry in VAR1T minus 1. Fine. That's what we want. Okay. 350. Okay. So you can go through this code. I'm skipping right now the detail about this code, but we are just calling the shift operation. And actually, first of all, what I have done in this particular code, let me show you. Here. In this code, first we are shifting all the columns, all 8 columns, and we are adding, right? So you can observe after 8 columns, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That means we have shifted all 8 columns by one position, and then we have copied. Okay. That means you can frame any kind of problem. We are picking just one problem. We want to predict the pollution. You can frame your problem that you want to predict the wind speed, right? You can frame your problem that you want to predict the wind speed and pollution from the previous data. So it depends how you want to frame. Would it be one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, many-to-many? It depends up to you. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. No, means I get confused. Here, these are the features, not the time steps. Okay, so means all these things will be considered into one-to-one. You know, even if we are predicting multiple features, but we are using output. We are predicting the output at one time step only, right? If you want to predict that time step for multiple, we are taking multiple input time steps to predict multiple output time steps. Then we'll say it is many-to-many. Is it clear? I make it a little bit confused. If still you have confused or doubt, please let me know. Is it clear what we are doing here? Okay.
Please shifting the data, kindly explain it once. I'm unable to get it.
Okay. Did you get this figure? First of all, means what we want to do.
Yes, sir. I got it.
Yeah. So once if you know what we want to do, this can be understood with this example also. That suppose we are having this data. Let's say this is the temperature from a time step. Let's say this is the time step 0 to 9, and this is the temperature at particular time step. 0 to 9. Now my objective is I want to predict the temperature at next time step given the temperature at current time step. Okay. So what I want to frame this problem as a supervised learning. In the supervised learning problem, there should be a pair of input and output. There should be one output with respect to the input, right? Either it is a regression problem or a classification problem, right? So I want a pair of X and Y. What is X and Y here? X is the temperature at the current input, a current time step, and Y would be the temperature at next time step. So what we are doing here, we are just shifting the temperature information. We are removing the first entry and we are copying it. So we have just moved the second entry as the first entry in the next one. That means the X is the 0th time step and this temperature is the output, which is at the first time step. And this is the actual temperature, right? This is the actual temperature. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. You're shifting it. T plus 1, again, the previous one is shifted to the T value.
Yes. No, sorry. I don't think so. I don't think there should be any issue, but okay. Point is, we are just making the pairs of X and Y. And you should understand what is X here, what is Y here. What is X? The information at current time step T. What is that? X is 0. What is Y? The temperature at next time step. Since we already know what is the next time, what is the temperature at next time step, that is 1. So we are making the pair of 0 and 1. That's it.
Yes,
And we are doing it for every time step. Is it clear now?
yes, sir. All the 10 iteration you are doing it.
Yes, yes. So now we are having a pair of X and Y. Okay. And same thing, we are doing it for all these columns. That's why it looks a little bit complicated here. But means when you will go through this code is actually doing shifting all the 8 columns which are available in the raw data. Fine. And if you will observe here, then we are dropping the rest of the things from 9 to 15 because we just want to predict one feature, pollution, right? As I mentioned, you can frame the problem in any manner as you want. So we are dropping all these columns, all other X, Y pairs, just keeping pollution pair. You know, that means the X will have 8 entries and Y will have 1 entry. That's it. For every time step. Fine.
Got it, sir.
Okay. Okay. And this is describing the total size of the sample, right? We are having 43,799 samples. In each sample, we are having 9 columns, 8 number of features, 1 output. So let's move to the, once we have prepared our data to train the model, now let's start defining and fit our model. In this phase, first step would be to split the data set into train and test. You may have gone through this concept that the given data has to be divided into multiple sets. Train, sometimes it is divided into 3 also, train, validation and test. Sometimes it is divided into 2, train and test, where we are performing multi-fold cross validation. Here we are dividing into 2 sets, train and test. First of all, we are picking the values from the reframed. Okay, whatever we have reframed, we are just picking the values. Any doubt? Okay. Here, what I'm doing, if you remember, every sample is an entry for 1 hour on a particular day. And the data belongs for 5 hours, 5 years, right? So what we are doing, we are taking 365 into 4 into 24 samples as training. That means data from 4 years as training data set and data for 1 year as test data set. So the number of trainers I have set 365 into 4 into 24. So we are picking the train set from values. We are picking from all rows up until n number of trainers and all columns. In the test, the remaining samples. Then we are splitting the train and test into input and output sets. So train underscore X and then train underscore Y. So train underscore X, that means the input at a particular time step that will be starting 8 columns. Output would be the last column. And same as for the test X and test Y. Here we are reshaping the train X in this format. Okay. We are making a 3D matrix from this train and test data. From the train and test X, the input trend has been converted into 3D matrix. The first dimension is describing the number of sample. Second is describing the time steps. Third dimension is describing number of features. That means since we in the train samples, we are having 365 into 4 cross 24. So the number of samples would be like this. Okay. Time steps, as I mentioned, we have framed the problem to identify the pollution at the next time step given the pollution at current time step, right? So we are using one time step. You know? So that's why we have make it 1. If you want to incorporate multiple time steps to predict output at one time step, you can reshape your data accordingly. Then number of features, how many features with respect to one sample. We have given this train x dot shape 1, that which would be 8. Okay, let me print the shape. Okay. Okay, train x dot shape will have 2 entries, the number of rows and number of columns, since it was already a 2D matrix. So the number of rows were 365 cross 4 cross 24 and number of columns were 8. Okay, so if we will call this function train x dot shape colon 0, it will give the number of rows and this will give the number of columns. So this is describing number of features, you know. So that's why we have mentioned 3 parameters: number of samples, that means number of rows, time steps, here 1, number of features, that is the number of columns in the train x, and same for the test x. So
Now,
we have, yes, any doubt?
no, sir.
Okay. So we have framed train x and test x. We have reshaped them because the LSTM requires this format. Okay. Let me execute this one. So you can observe the shape of the train x is like this one. These are the number of samples, 1 time step, 8 number of features. Okay. Train y dot shape, these are the number, since this is the 35040, 1, so this is the shape of the train y. Then test x, it is having 8759 entries, and for every entry there would be 8 features. So we have prepared the test and trend data for our model. Now the next step is to design the network. So we are going to define the LSTM with 50 neurons here in the first hidden layer. First of all, we are going to call, since we are going to make a sequential LSTM model, so we are calling model equals to sequential, and then we are going to add the layers, right? This is the syntax to create a model, where first we create a sequential model. So we are calling model equals to sequential, and then we can add as much as number of layers to this model. First of all, we are adding an LSTM layer here with 50 neurons, 50 units. The input shape we have defined like this one, shape 1 and shape 2. I have commented this one. I will come back to this point. Okay. Then after the LSTM, since this is the regression problem, we want to predict the value of pollution. That's why the dense layer is having only 1 neuron. Suppose if it is a binary classification, we will have 2 neurons in the last layer, dense layer. If it is a multi-class classification, let's say 5 classes are there, I will set it as a 5. Okay. Okay, let us execute only this simple model first, then we will see how we can, what are the parameters you can tune. Okay. So when we have created an LSTM, we have added an LSTM layer, we have added an output layer, dense layer, and then we are compiling. We are compiling the model. That means we are training the model now. We are setting the compiling parameters. Parameters are, first, if you remember, to train a model, we require 2 things. One is the loss function, and second is the optimization. We discussed about the gradient descent. Okay, in theory we discussed about the gradient descent. Here we are using, and loss function here we are using minimum absolute error, right? MAE. There might be question why we are using MAE. In theory we were using cross entropy, right? So if the problem is the classification and there are let's say multiple classes, you should go with the cross entropy. If the problem is regression, then you have to either go with the minimum absolute error or minimum squared error and so on. So those would work as a loss function because this is a regression problem now. Optimizer, of course, you can go with the gradient descent. Let's say I can use the stochastic gradient descent, right? But okay, we will do this one. Let's go with the SGD. We will change the Adam at a later stage. ADAM is, you can say, an optimized version of the stochastic gradient descent. And again, means answer for the questions that should we use SGD or ADM, it depends, right? There is no gold standard answer to identify the value of any hyperparameter in these deep learning models. Okay, whatever works for you, that is good. So once we have described the loss function and optimization, we are going to train the model. So next step is the model.fit. We are describing the train X, train Y, number of epochs. I hope you are familiar with the epochs. One epoch described that we have trained the model for all samples, right? So the number of samples were 35040. That means the model has been updated for 354,040 samples. That is one epoch. You know, so you can understand 100 epochs will take a lot of time. Let me reduce it right now to do it 50. You can do it again. Means how many number of epochs? 50 or 100. For this, there is in case of these deep neural networks or neural networks, as I mentioned, there is no gold standard to identify what should be the value of hyperparameters, but there are some intuitions, there are some rationale from which you can start. Okay, if you know that the size of the model is not complex, then the number of epochs would be lower. If the size of your model is large and the number it is complex, number of weights are large, the number of epochs should be increased. Okay, so yes, there is a rationale by which you can identify these numbers, but still you cannot say that is 20 is large number of epochs or 200 is large number of epochs, right? There is no clear answer for that one. So this is the number of epoch. Batch size. If you understand about batch size, what we are doing actually when we are calling stochastic gradient descent and we are giving a batch size 72, if I correctly remember in the lecture from the before my lecture in the theory, means in the morning lecture by by Mr. Arunjit, he has mentioned that the model will be, we applied one sample, there would be some error, we trained the model, right? Then we apply second sample, there would be some output, we calculate error, and again we train the model. That means we are training the model for every sample, right? That is simple gradient descent. That is simple stochastic gradient descent. And once we train the model for every sample, we are done with one epoch.
Sir, one question, sir.
Yes.
Sir, actually, we don't have any idea about how many number of epochs should be for any data set, so that it will produce accurate result. But sir,
Yes.
if suppose that we put 10 number of epoch and the result is getting good, and in some other data set we are putting 200 of epochs and the result is getting suppose that is also good. But if we are increasing number of epochs, so indirectly it will affect the complexity of the algorithm.
Yes, as the number of epochs are going to increase, I will not say it is increasing the complexity of algorithm. It is increasing the execution time of training of your model. It is not changing your model, right?
Sir, because it will run for suppose that for a huge data set or training set, then it will execute all the training set for that number of times.
Yes, I agree what you are saying, but I am just correcting, I am updating your statement, which is like that. If you are going to increase number of epochs, it will increase the training time of your model. It will not change anything, the execution time of your model, means the testing time of your model. When you are going to deploy that model, it will not change the execution time, right? Number of epochs will only change the execution time at the training, and it will not change the model itself. We are not making any changes in the model, except means we are not changing the architecture of model. except the weights we execute 20 pokes or 50 pokes.
Yes, sir. Got it. Got it. Thank you.
है ना? And to address that, how you want to how you will identify these parameters. Let's say if you are working for the first time in this particular area, how you will identify, how you will means how you will tune your hyperparameters, right? To do that, I will show one thing. Okay, when I will execute this particular cell, there would be one curve for validation and loss, validation and training loss. I will show you what you have to look. Okay, and how you can decide it. At least for few parameters, we can do some empirical experiments. Okay. So, I was discussing about the stochastic gradient descent, where we are picking one sample randomly, and then we are providing it to the model. We are updating the model, and we are doing it for every sample. You know? In case of gradient descent, what we were doing, sorry, I think I just make a mistake. In case of gradient descent, what we do, we apply all the samples, we calculate the errors, we make the total error, and then we train the model. That means training of model happens once in one epoch in gradient descent. In stochastic gradient descent, where one sample is picked randomly, output will be calculated, error will be calculated, and model will be trained n times, that is equals to number of samples in one epoch. Okay, this is stochastic gradient. In both the cases, gradient descent and stochastic gradient descent, there is an issue. In case of gradient descent, training of the model will not occur until all the samples will be executed, right? That is an issue. In case of stochastic gradient descent, model is being trained for every sample, right? So if there would be some outliers, it will change your model a lot. That is one issue. So there is another the optimizer called mini batch gradient descent, mini batch stochastic gradient descent. Okay, so here we are using that one, mini batch stochastic gradient descent, where we are making the batch size equals to 72. That means we will apply 72 samples on model. We will calculate output, 72 outputs. We will calculate, and corresponding to summation of these 72 errors, we will train the model. That means for every 72 samples, we are going to train the model. So number of training of the model in one epoch would be number of samples divided by 72. This is mini batch stochastic gradient. Is it clear? So this is the parameter. Sorry. Then when we are describing the validation data set, verbose, which describes that it should print what is going on, what are the validation and training loss in every epoch, and the shuffle is false. At the last, we are going to plot the training loss and validation loss. Okay, so let me execute this one. Okay, here it is. So you can observe the model is being trained in every epoch. You can okay, so this is the training loss. Okay, this is the training loss, this is the validation loss, this is the time taken in every epoch. You can observe that the training loss is decreasing, right? See here. The training loss starting from 0.06 is now decreasing to 0.05, 0.4, 3, 2, 1, 6. And probably after epoch 27, 28, you can observe that it is not decreasing much. You know? It remains around almost static. So this is one way how you can identify that if your training loss is not being reduced, that means now you can stop your epochs. You know? After certain epochs, you can observe after, let's say, after this one, 35, the validation loss remains around 0.0140. One way how you can identify. Same. One more thing, you have to observe the validation loss, right? Validation loss, that means whatever you have trained, Now you are applying that model, you are applying the test data on that model to identify how much you want to tune that model, right, in the next epoch. So again, the validation loss will also decrease gradually, and you can observe it goes up to 1.30, 0.0130, and then it start increasing. Are you getting this point? Till the epochs 27, 28, it is decreasing, and after that, it remains stable for some epochs. Then it is increasing further. 1.40, 1, 2, 3. Fine. So by analyzing these two things, you can say around you should stop your number of epochs around 30 or 28. Fine. So this is one way. Let me show you one thing. This graph is very important when you are working with the neural networks. Okay, it is describing the trend loss, loss during the train and loss during the test, or you can say the error bit during the train and test. In case of training, you can see the trend loss is gradually decreasing. Exponentially decreasing in the initial phase, and then it is becoming almost saturated. In case of test, there is a lot of fluctuation in the initial stage, in the initial epochs, then it decreases a lot, and then it becomes almost saturated. And after some epochs, we observed that after around 30 epochs, it again start increasing. Point is, first of all, can I use a pen here? Okay. Let me use a pen here. I hope I have shared the complete screen, right? I just want. So point is to identify that you are going in the right path or not while you are building your neural network. Let's say I'm plotting the validation loss with this dot. Sorry, training loss with dot, and testing loss with this one. Okay. So here dot is describing the trend loss, loss at the time of training, and the circles are describing the loss at the time of testing. So what I want to say is that, first of all, the loss function, this curve, ROC curve, must look like this one. It should be a decreasing function with respect to time. Let's say if it is not going in this way, it is going like this way, or it is not it is not decreasing. Let's say your test loss is like this one, then your model is not good. You have to restructure your model, or you have to rebuild your model. Fine. There might be some scenario which may give you output like this, or you may get some initial reduction, but after that it get like this. All these things are issues. What you want is that your trend loss must look like this one, right? And of course, means that is the next thing that you want to try to match. You want to try to reduce this gap. You want to make this loss close to zero. Fine. Second thing, since this is regarding that loss at the time of training, okay, that means it does not matter this how much this loss is. The loss which matter is the validation loss. The loss on the data set on which that model is not trained, right? So let's say if your model is trained or fitted, right? Your model would look like this one. Your training loss is very low, but your test loss would be very high. There would be a large gap between test loss, train loss and test loss. That will describe you an overfitting. So you have to then incorporate some regularization parameters, right? Is it clear? Is it okay? Means I am just picking few topics. There are, okay, those who are interested, I will suggest few video links. There are 2 video links. One, of course, through by the N2NG. He has already provided few concept on the regularization. I will also suggest one video lecture, means one YouTube link I was going through. That is, if you will search deep learning in Hindi, right? It contains lots of playlists which deals with the regularization of the deep neural networks and all. So you can go through that. Okay, let me come back to the coding. So let us complete this one. Okay, so that's how we have trained our model. Now next is we want to predict our data set. We want to predict the output. So the syntax is model.predict. We are giving the test underscore x. We are predicting y hat. Once we have predicted y hat, the issue is that the predictor y hat would be from 0 to 1. But what we want, the actual output might be in the actual range, right? So what we have to do, we have to apply inverse transform of the scalar. If you remember, when we were applying the normalization, we called scalar dot fit transform. We make a scalar, min-max scalar with the feature range 0 to 1, and then we call the fit transform of the scalar. Okay, if we want to perform inversion of this minimization or means normalization, we will call inverse fit transform. Okay, so we are calling scalar dot inverse transform, and since when we were performing the scalar, the normalization, the input size was n, 8. Okay, so when we have to perform the inverse normalization, again the input should be n, 8. To do that, what we have done, we have concat the predicted output with the test x, right? We removed the first column. Instead of that, we copied the predicted output. We calculate the inverse transform. That means we perform the renormalization, and then we again re-extract the first column. Actually, what we want to do, we want to apply the inverse normalization on predicted output. To do that, we first converted in n cross 8, and then we again pick the first column. Same thing for the test y. We means apply the inverse normalization, and at last we calculate the root mean square error between the predicted output and the inverse, means the predicted output and the actual output. So let me execute this one. Okay. Actually, I have not printed root mean square here. What I have printed is printed the inverse y hat. That means the predicted output and the actual output. This is the predicted output 46, actual output is 65. Predicted of 58, actual output 70. Okay. So let me check. No. We are doing some mistake here. It is regarding the test y, inverse y, that is okay, and test x, y hat, okay. Yes. Okay, yeah, so these are the predicted values. Okay, so you can see there is a lot of error, since we just started with this script. Okay, and finally this is describing the output. Means I have just plotted the predicted and actual values here, and the root mean square error is 24.9, which shows that it is very large. Okay, you can observe from this output, right? I have just printed initial 10 predicted output and actual outputs. Okay. Yes, means the objective of this particular experiment was not to tune this model to obtain the best values. Means I have not gone in much detail about this particular problem. I just picked this problem. I feel this problem was simple to explain, so I just picked this one. What might be the options to tune? First of all, okay, let me do some changes here. Let me check for the Adam. Let me execute all the cells since. So if I do with the Adam, let us see what happened. I have just changed the optimizer, right? And now you can see that even after 15 iterations, even after 15, your test error is increasing, right? Test loss is increasing, although trend loss is being saturated, but test loss is increasing after around 15 epochs. That means with this optimization parameter, it is describing that you should go around up to see 15 or 16 epochs. So means you have to identify answer of these questions empirically or by the literature survey, right? How they for the same problem, how the literatures in the literature survey, what are the solutions has been proposed and so on. Because one solution for one problem may not work for another problem. Okay. And there are lots of options, like you can change the loss function, you can change the number of epochs, you can change the number of batches, right? You can change the train and test size. Achha, I have not mentioned about this. This is what about the dropout, as we have discussed, the concept of dropout. So you can also add a dropout, although when I tried it, it further reducing the accuracy. So I just commented it. You can increase the dropout on every particular unit, and you can increase the dropout after every particular cell. Okay, so these are two dropout parameters here. In addition to that, there are various other regularization techniques like early stopping criteria. Okay, you can increase the time steps. You can increase the time steps and all. These are few optimization techniques you can go with. But the objective of this experiment from my side was to explain how you can implement a simple LSTM. Okay, so by this I will stop, and if you have any doubt, please ask. I have already said the raw file and the code file, so you can execute this code. I also shared the link, means where you can find lots of other examples, right? And if you want to try other architectures, the major advantage with the Python is that lots of help. You will find the pre-built architecture of various neural networks, and you can do that. You can test on your data.
Hello.
Sir,
Yes.
what is the purpose of using model parameter and hyperparameter?
Generally, we divide the parameters into two things: model parameters and hyperparameters. Model parameters, we generally consider the weights as a model parameters, while the hyperparameters we generally consider the like how many number of layers would be there. What will be the dropout factor? Will it be 0.4, 0.2, 0.1, right? So all those things we consider as a hyperparameters. So hyperparameters are tuned after one epoch, means at the time of validation, and the weights are trained during one particular epoch.
Sir, so it increases the accuracy of the model?
We are updating the weight vectors to improve, to build the model, and we are tuning the hyperparameters to increase the accuracy. right? So
Okay,
both
sir.
the purpose of updating both the parameters is to build the model in a better manner.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So is there any other query from any of the participants? Sir, somebody is asking for some links to learn deep learning.
Okay. Okay, I will compile means few I have the links through I went so I will compile those links, you know, so it will take little bit time, but I will do it by today or by tomorrow. I will share those links. I will compile in one file and then I will share with the sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. Any other query, any other question from the participants?
Sir, from where to get the data set for this work, sir?
I have already mentioned the link for the dataset. In the
Okay,
file,
sir.
the link for the dataset is already mentioned.
Okay, sir. Okay.
All the files are in your Google Classroom.
Okay, sir. Okay.
The code file is in the Google Classroom, sir have shared, and in the code file, I have mentioned the link of the data. Although means for this particular problem, I have already provided the dataset itself, raw.csv, but for other problems, you can find from that link.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Got it, sir.
So any other query from the participants? So I think there is no query, sir.
Okay, sir.
So I would like to say once again thanks that for such a nice delivery of lecture, and which was basically very much hands-on. And the people who wants to work in this particular field in the data science or in machine learning or especially using LSTM, they will be I think they got benefited out of that. And once again, sir, thank you very much that you have given your consent in a very short period of time for delivering lecture. Thank you very much, sir. And in future, sir, we will contact with you.
Sure, sir. Sure. It means it was nice for me to interacting with all the participants. Participants were means I was observing the participants were really active. So it is really good when we have to interact with the participants and they are interested to learn something.
So then, in that case, you will be getting the lots of queries in your mail.
Sure, sure. I
After
will
some
be
time,
happy.
yeah.
Please, I request all the participants to fire your questions in my mail ID. Okay.
Okay, sir. So nice of you, sir. Thank you very much.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, all the participants, I'm just going to share the feedback link for the session. To kindly fill it and submit it as soon as possible. And I have already shared all the lecture materials what I have received from the different speakers. So kindly go through it because tomorrow we are going to have a test based upon that. It will be a multiple choice question, and I will be giving a Google form for that. Okay.
Should I leave the meeting, sir?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
So now the feedback link for the session 3 of day 4 is available with you, and it is also available. The link is also available in your Google Classroom. If somebody missed here. Okay. So thank you very much. We'll meet again tomorrow at 10:15. Okay. So the schedule of tomorrow will start from 10:15. Is there any query out of that? And once again, I request you all that please be regular in the sessions. As you know that the attendance is being monitored via the Google Classroom itself on the regular basis. Okay. And you also
Sir,
know that the importance of attendance. Yes.
Sir, shall we get our attendance of these 4 days?
Right now, I can tell you the out today because I'm having the right now. Just right now, I'm having the file for that with me. So just a minute. For today, what's your good name?
Sir, Ayushi.
Just a minute. it is there. So today's mark for this third session is present.
Sir, for the morning session, I was also present in the morning session.
So it will be there. There is nothing like that कि आपकी attendance mark नहीं होगी क्योंकि it is automatically taken actually on the regular interval.
Okay, sir. Okay.
As far as for the last session at Google Classroom have taken 7 attendance at the different interval time.
Okay, sir. Sir, it will be when it will be updated on AICT portal.
So before AICT portal, I will inform you about your attendance.
Okay, sir.
Because once it will go to the AICT portal, there will be no chances of any rectification in that. Okay.
Okay, sir.
If there will be any you can say that problem in the attendance, maybe you miss some particular attendance in some particular session, so it might be rectified before that actually. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. So thank you very much. So we'll meet again tomorrow at 10:15 sharp. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience listening. For all the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.